Our viewers will be wondering the pictures that they were watching at the moment, and these are pictures that we're just bringing in from northern Israel following strikes coming from the Lebanese side of the border. So as you're seeing, extensive damage, large fire. This appears to be the immediate aftermath of an attack, some kind of strike coming from the Lebanese side of the border. And this speaks again to what our correspondent, Ali Hashem, who was just reporting from Lebanon, was saying. This is what we're seeing on day 27 of the conflict, even as we continue to keep a very close watch on what's happening in that border area between Lebanon and Israel. There have been exchanges, there have been attacks on both sides, exchanges of artillery, and this is the... I'm just getting new information. Bear with me for a second. I'm told that Al-Qassam Brigade is claiming responsibility. That's Al-Qassam Brigade, which is the armed wing of Hamas, but this one based in Lebanon is claiming responsibility for this particular attack after, it says, having launched 12 missiles from Lebanon. That's what you're looking at. We will examine the aftermath. We'll keep a close eye on this. We'll go back to Ali at some point in Lebanon, talk about the aftermath of all of this. I want to just put this on a brief pause, even as we continue to watch it, to bring back in our guest, Eric. Eric, thanks for your patience. I mean, you will understand, as our viewers will, that we're always watching multiple fronts in this conflict. You were telling us about your experience and what your colleagues in Gaza's hospitals have been sharing with you. Essentially, you were telling us that they have to do quick triage. That's what they're reduced to. They have to do quick triage of patients based on what they believe will be their chances of survival.
Yeah, but the situation, when you do a triage, this is very much what decides your choices is also the amount of resources you have available. And at the moment, as they have limited access to anesthesia, to vital drugs, they have limited access to electrical power. Of course, that means that they have to give up patients that they otherwise could have saved. And that's really a very difficult situation for professional healthcare workers. I want to add another thing about my colleagues at Shifa and all the other hospitals. They are also lacking drinking water to clean themselves. They lack everything to sustain their own health and well-being. And they report to us that now many of them are getting skin problems. They are getting also diseases. So this is a really... gastrointestinal diseases. So this is becoming almost hopeless situation for them. And I don't think this can compare with anything I have experienced at Shifa before.
No, look, and that makes sense because this is the worst attack by far on Gaza, the most heavy bombardment and the highest level of destruction by far that we've seen in all the Gaza wars. Eric Fosse, thank you so much for sharing that with us, bringing us both your experience and what your colleagues on the ground right now are telling us. I want to go back to what we are watching now, and I'm going to bring in Al Jazeera's Ali Hashem, who is on the Lebanese side of the Lebanon-Israel border. Ali, we are getting in a claim of responsibility by the Al-Qassam Brigade in Lebanon that they have sent some 12 missiles into Israel. If you're hearing me, what can you add to that?
Well, in fact, Al-Qassam Brigade's Hamas military wing has announced or claimed responsibility for hitting Kiryat Shmona and other Israeli settlements in the north with more than 12 rockets. Now, we saw the picture of the impact. This is not the first time, by the way, that Al-Qassam Brigade's is claiming responsibility for missile launch from Lebanon. They've done that for at least 3-4 times during the past 25 days. And in a previous occasion, at least few days ago, there was a similar impact in a residential area. So what we are seeing isn't unprecedented. However, the barrage today, the big number of rockets that being sent at the same time, on different fronts or different sections of the border is the significant thing here, because it seems that this gradual escalation is heating up, as we've been saying before, just before Nasrallah's speech tomorrow. At the same time, Hezbollah using the explosive-laden drones, and Hamas today hitting Kiryat Shmona with these missiles, and these missiles weren't intercepted by the Iron Dome. Also, Hezbollah and whoever, because now we have, let's just draw a bit framework for whoever is working on the Lebanese front. We have Hezbollah working on the Lebanese front. There is also Al-Qassam brigades from Hamas. There is also Al-Quds brigades, Islamic Jihad's military wing. And there's the Fajr forces, that's the Islamic or the Muslim Brotherhood, Lebanese Muslim Brotherhood's military wing. So we have now several groups under one umbrella. Hezbollah is the one in control here in South Lebanon. So this picture from here is accumulating. Over the past 25 days, we've been seeing high days, low days. Also, we've been seeing days where Hezbollah is announcing like 20 of its fighters or 15 of its fighters being killed, accumulating to around 60 fighters killed, alongside with several Hamas, several Islamic Jihad fighters killed, and most importantly, 6 Lebanese civilians killed over the past 25 days, including 3 in the past 48 hours.
Ali, when you look, we're still looking at the pictures. We see a lot of burned cars, damage to what appears to be a residential buildings when those, there you go, when those pictures zoom out. When you consider the target, we're talking about the town of Kiryat Shmona, which is an Israeli border town, Israeli side of the border, of course. When you consider the target, the level of damage, and the information we have that dozens of rockets were sent, how do you assess this? Because this is what you've been doing for the past 27 days. Each time there's an attack, you have to ask yourself, well, is this an escalation? Is this more of the same? What kind of message is the Lebanese side sending to the Israeli side, or vice versa? So how do you assess this?
Well, we have to take into consideration the Lebanese front is an adjacent front. It's a side front. But this side front is reacting in 2 ways. One way, it's reacting to whatever is happening in Gaza, to the Israeli incursion in Gaza, to the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. This is one side. And also the Lebanese front is reacting to Israeli attacks and retaliation on Lebanese side. So we have here 2 layers. And on each layer, there are many reasons to see this happening. But also, as we've been saying, this has been escalating and accumulating over the past days. So there is a message here. The message is that this is a new threshold, and the new threshold is taking us to a new stage. We've been talking in the past few weeks about the stages and the phases. We've been in level 1, and level 1 had 3 phases. The phase where we had the borderline of 2 kilometers depth on both sides. Then the depth of the front went towards 5 or 6 kilometers. Then we went to a depth of a front where Israel is hitting in the Lebanese south's depth, or like 14, 15, 16 kilometers inside Lebanon. Today, across the Litani River, which is, according to 1701, the United Nations resolution, was an area of hostile activities. And Hezbollah or Hamas or whoever is launching rockets from this side is also hitting to the farther point, for example, of Rosh Pina in Israel, which is like 14 kilometers, 15 kilometers from the border. So that was phase 3 of level 1. Now, with Nasrallah speaking tomorrow, we might be heading to level 2. What's going to be in level 2? This is what we're going to hear from Hassan Nasrallah. He is going to draw this framework, and he's been doing that in the past wars. We, at least in comparing what Nasrallah is doing today to what Nasrallah used to do in, for example, 2006 war. We're seeing a pattern here. He is announcing a new thing, a new step. So what's going to be the step? This is the big question that I think it's the $1 million or $1 billion question for everyone in the Middle East.
Ali, is he likely to announce clearly this is step 2, this is step 3, or are you looking more at sort of tangential references and allusions I mean, do you think he will say explicitly what he intends to do, or do you expect more oblique references to next steps for Hezbollah when Hassan Nasrallah speaks?
Well, most probably, at least given the past, coverages, Nasrallah tends to clarify some points and keep other points vague. So, for example, there will be some red lines that he will clarify, but there are other red lines that he will keep vague to, give a kind of a space of safety for his group, for his people, in order to let the Israelis guess more and more about. This is a tactic. And if, Nasrallah has been good in psychological warfare. For example, before this speech, just a few days before this speech, there was a clip from Hezbollah, a 12-second clip, with Nasrallah just passing a Hezbollah flag. That flagged to many that there is something coming and that Nasrallah is going to speak. And with Nasrallah speaking, everyone is waiting, because we know this is a situation where this group, Hezbollah, affiliated with Iran, and this resistance axis, as they call it, is in control in several places. The geographical leverage they have from Iraq to Lebanon to Syria to Yemen. And we've been witnessing in the past days missile launches from Yemen. So this is becoming regional, even if it's not yet a regional conflict in definition. But at least if we watch it from far, it's becoming regional.
No, absolutely. And that's why we keep looking at these specific pockets of territory around the region. One of them is where you are and have been since pretty much the beginning of this war. And look, Ali, I'll tell you what we're seeing, because you can't see the same pictures, obviously, right now. But we're seeing pictures that were shot just moments ago from Kiryat Shmona. Now, that's just a few kilometers away from the Israel-Lebanon border. Clearly, the rockets that were fired by Al-Qassam brigade hit an urban center. So that tracks with what Israeli Channel 12 is saying, that dozens of rockets, they're talking about a direct hit in Kiryat Shmona, and that's exactly what we're watching, the aftermath of that. So they hit multiple cars. We saw the firefighters, and we heard the sirens. As first responders, and you see the flashing lights there, the sirens, as first responders are now at the scene attempting to put out the fires. So Ali Hashem was giving us all the context around that. This, less than 24 hours before Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah is set to speak from Lebanon tomorrow. So we will... Ali, I see you're still with me. Okay, so that's the scene. It is now 1600 GMT. It's 6 p.m. where you are. Some viewers will be joining us just now. Can you just recap what has happened in the last hour or so, less than that, where you are, for people who are joining us now?
Well, we'll start with the impact in Kiryat Shmona on the Israeli side of the border after the Al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing in Lebanon, announced launching 12 rockets towards the northern towns and cities in Israel. Now, as you were showing on the screen, there was an impact, maybe several impacts. Now, we don't have a clear picture of number of casualties, whether there are casualties, especially that the Israeli army over the past weeks have announced this area as a military area and asked many people to leave. Now, this is one. Second thing, which was very significant, Hezbollah using explosive-laden drones in attacking Israeli positions in South Lebanon, on the South Lebanon border. This was significant because it's the first time that this element enters the front line between Lebanon and Israel. Also, part of this whole context of rockets, there were several rockets launched today towards several positions, maybe 6 launches towards 6 locations on the Israeli border, including one here where we are in Naqoura, and the sounds were really huge, different from the ones before, and we didn't really see any kind of interception. This is another thing. Also, there's an issue that should be taken into consideration. As you were saying, Nasrallah is going to speak tomorrow. Also, we have 3 Lebanese civilians who were killed over the past 48 hours. Now, you were mentioning the Kiryat Shmona impact. we have to take into consideration the Israeli military has been hitting several residential homes here in Lebanon. So there are several Lebanese houses that were hit on the border, whether in Mays al-Jabal, whether in Ait al-Sha'ab, whether in Alma al-Sha'ab. So we're talking about several places. So this also could be part of the whole equation, of the bigger equation. And as we said, tomorrow Nasrallah is going to speak. Nasrallah is going to put a price tag on all this.
Ali, I'm just going to run our viewers through the pictures. We have two sources of pictures right now. It's 16 GMT, 1800 local in the region. What you're seeing were pictures from a very short while ago after a rocket attack from Hamas's Al-Qassam brigade, the Lebanese-based wing of the Al-Qassam brigade. And what you're seeing now is the live picture of that area in Kiryat Shmona in northern Israel. So the fire has now been put out. That's what it looks like live right now. The fire's been put out, and now we're getting a clearer sense of where those rockets hit. It was clearly some kind of commercial, urban area. You see civilian cars that were hit, that were on fire. You see the first responders, the firefighters that are on the scene that have now successfully put out the fire. And that's the aftermath. And top right of your screen is what moments ago was still happening when the fire was still burning. Ali, before we move on from this, again, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, speaks tomorrow. He has not spoken directly, or correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he hasn't spoken publicly, addressed the nation, and I should say the region, since the beginning of this conflict, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's been more than 25, 26 days since the beginning of this conflict. Nasrallah has been silent, and his silence was described as suspicious because everyone was waiting Nasrallah to talk, to draw the red lines from the beginning. What seems Nasrallah just had this decision to keep the situation going on towards accumulation, just as we are seeing. And it's not a coincidence that 24 hours before he speaks, the front line is heating up this way. And Hezbollah is using kind of different elements, different weapons. Hamas is using maybe stronger missiles from the Lebanese side of the border. So this is just kind of setting the scene, and he is setting the scene in order to say, well, now we've done all this, and now we are maybe on the verge, or this is a threshold for a new level, a new phase.
Each of these fighting groups, and you named a number of them that are active on the Lebanese side of the border, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's the Hamas, Hamas's military wing, Islamic Jihad's military wing, you named another as well. Each of these military groups have their own...
Al-Fajr forces.
Yes, absolutely. They have their own strategic considerations. On balance, do experts assess that Hezbollah is keen to open a full-scale war or not at the moment?
Well, it's clear, Cyril, this is going to be a long war of attrition. At least this is what we can say as observers here, as reporters covering this war. It's going to be a long war of attrition, just in case, as it's been said, that in Gaza there's going to be a long war, because this is linked. This is kind of organically linked. And with these groups functioning here in South Lebanon, no one can function in South Lebanon without Hezbollah's consent. And no one can function away from Hezbollah's umbrella. So there is a clear umbrella here. And at least there is a kind of analysis that all these actions are choreographed. So whoever is doing something is coordinating with the other side. And at the end, this whole picture of escalation is kind of setting the scene and drawing the bigger picture. And this bigger picture is aimed at signaling. And we had this discussion before. There are signals being sent from here. There are signals sent to the Israelis on one side, and there is another signal sent to the international community, to the United States, in specific. Now, this is the first time, Cyril, that Palestinian groups are functioning from South Lebanon since 1982. 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon in order to expel the Palestinian resistance from Lebanon. And at that time, the PLO was here, and they left to Tunisia. And since then, there were only mostly Lebanese groups functioning from the Lebanese border, except for some cases. Now, this is the first time they're functioning completely open. Everyone knows about them. and under Hezbollah's umbrella. So it's a picture of an axis. Hezbollah, Iran, the Palestinian groups, whoever is with them in this axis that they call the axis of resistance, is signaling a message that there is a possibility of a wider conflict in case allies of Israel didn't stop it from continuing its war on Gaza. So will this have ears to listen, or it will fall on deaf ears? This is another question, because sometimes with such contained situations, contained tension as the one in Lebanon, things might slide gradually, and it's sliding gradually, even if it's also a calculated sliding. And we can see that it's a calculated escalation. Rules of engagement are being updated on daily basis. So if Hezbollah is sending rockets, or Hamas, or whoever, or Hezbollah is using new elements, new weapons, Israel is also doing the same thing. Israel is now using warplanes. At the beginning, there were no use of warplanes. Now Israel is using them extensively. It's using drones extensively. Hezbollah used its drones for the first time, but we wouldn't be surprised to see Hezbollah using more and more drones, especially with a lot of allegations to Iran of supplying Russia with drones, explosive-laden drones. So why not Hezbollah having such drones like the Shahids in Lebanon and being launched towards Israel? So it's actually a big question here, and everyone actually is in the state of wondering and questioning, and concerns are high, especially for people living on the border. It's not an easy situation to be. We are now in a border village, so just like 2 kilometers behind me is the Israeli position, and anytime the Israelis are shelling, we can see the shells falling in the space between us and the Israeli positions. That's within the 2 kilometers depth. So it's not an easy situation. We are journalists, we have to do that. But for normal residents, for farmers, for shepherds, they can't do that. And in a country that's going through a lot of economic hardships, and people who are bankrupt, government that's bankrupt, there is a very big question over how people are going to cope with this situation.
No, absolutely. Look, what you describe and what you say makes a lot of sense, Ali, with people on both sides of the border, who would like to lead their normal lives, and that has become increasingly, if not totally, impossible with everything that we've been seeing over the last 3 weeks. I think the key word in what you said was the calculated sliding part, and that's why every day you're explaining to us, what we're looking at and what it means, and does it mean escalation, or does it mean that it's this weird kind of status quo that we've been seeing for 3 weeks? Ali, thank you so much for all that context, all those explanations.